Good evening. A bill providing the most sweeping overhaul of the nation's immigration laws in 2 decades was overwhelmingly approved by the Senate yesterday. The vote was 76-18. The bill would amnesty millions of illegal aliens now in the country and attempt to stem the flow of fresh illegals estimated at 1 million a year. The Reagan administration supports the bill. Attorney General William French Smith said it would conserve the heritage of a nation of immigrants while ensuring adequate legal authority to regain control of our borders. The Senate passed a similar bill last year, but it got blocked in the House, and opposition is expected to surface there again. Hispanic leaders think the legislation discriminates against their community. Organized labor also opposes key parts of the bill. Tonight, the proposed immigration reform and the arguments against it. Jim?
Robin, there are 3 major purposes of the Senate legislation: control more carefully the flow of legal immigrants to this country, discourage the coming of the illegal ones, and make legal the illegals already here. It would set a $425,000 annual cap on legal immigration, which would include those granted political asylum. It would impose fines on any employer of 4 or more persons who hired an illegal alien. A national identification system would be set up to help the employer separate the legal worker from the illegal. So would a better system of allowing foreign workers to come to the country on a temporary basis, most of whom do farm work. Finally, it would grant legal status, amnesty, to many illegal aliens now living in the United States. Those who could prove residence here since 1977 would be granted permanent residence status, since 1980, temporary residence status, then permanent after 3 years. It's a complicated piece of legislation, and those are only the high spots. The Senate author of the bill is Senator Alan Simpson, Republican of Wyoming. The senator was to be with us tonight, but he was held up by a vote on the Senate floor. Here in his explainer's place is a supporter of the legislation, Roger Connor, Executive Director of the Federation for American Immigration Reform. Mr. Connor, first of all, why cap immigration at 425,000?
Because that's the current level of legal immigration. But our legal immigration system until recent, right now, Jim, is like an entitlement system. It's growing every year. So what this legislation does is put a ceiling on immigration at 425,000 and say if legal immigration is going to grow in the future, it'll be by an act of Congress, not just having it continue to grow automatically.
But that would not be a reduction then, in other words, in terms of how many legal immigrants come into this country now.
That's right. They decided to set the limit at the current level, and then the bill also requires that this level be reviewed every 3 years to see whether it should be raised, lowered, or left the same as circumstances change.
Okay, the fines on employers who hire illegal aliens, how stiff would they be?
It'd be $1,000 per illegal for the first time they're caught. If they continue to violate this law, the fines per person would go up, and eventually they could even suffer a criminal penalty.
Criminal penalty meaning going to jail?
That's right.
I see. All right, now the national identification system. As I understand it, the bill doesn't lay out exactly what the system would be. It just says have one, right?
But what's envisioned, and this was explained on the floor, is that employers will call and check the Social Security number that you and I already have in the same way that a merchant checks your American Express or Visa card number today. Happens millions of times every day. The technology is well settled. That's the kind of system that's envisioned.
Not a ID card system.
Well, there may be a new improved Social Security card that the person shows the employer, and then the employer checks the number. But the key to the system will be checking the Social Security number. Whether there will be a new card or whether we will rely for identifying the person on things like driver's license, that's still up in the air. But the key is you've got to check the Social Security number to make sure that it's a valid number and that it belongs to the person who's applied for the job.
And the theory behind this bill is that this could be done simply by, say, a small farmer hiring 4 or 5. You'd have to hire at least 4 to be really under the sanctions, but he could just simply check these numbers to see if the cards were real and the numbers were real?
That's right. In fact, the smallest restaurant in Washington, D.C. or New York City has figured out how to call an 800 line and check the credit cards. And we don't see any reason why the employers of America can't also learn how to check people's cards when they apply for a job. And by the way, the bill allows them to check by within 24 hours of the person being hired, so that the person who's hiring laborers for just a few days will have time to put that person to work the first day and check his card by the following day.
All right, the amnesty program. How many illegal aliens is it estimated that this would legalize?
The problem is nobody knows, and that's one of the hazards of this section of the bill, which we are not enthusiastic about.
Your organization is not that
FAIR is not supportive of this section.
FAIR is the acronym for your organization.
For Federation for American Immigration Reform.
Right.
And the problem is it may be 2 million, it may be 10 million. Nobody really knows how many people this is going to apply to. And what the other difficulty with it is that people who are now outside the country may come in and attempt to get fraudulent documents in order to qualify for the amnesty. So how many people will it apply to? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows.
Well, then I guess then nobody would know how many it would not apply to, right? I mean, in other words, even a percentage of the illegal aliens that are in this country today, there's no way to know what the amnesty...
The 1980 date, I'm sure, is going to apply to perhaps 75 or 80% of the illegal immigrants who are currently in the country. So we're talking about literally several million people who would be covered by this amnesty.
Thank you. Robin?